There are stories most Buddhists never hear. Stories that don't appear in soft-spoken Dharma talks. Stories that challenge the clean, polished version of the Buddha we're used to. This is one of them. It's a story about desire, about shame, about purity, about what we judge, and about the exact kind of human messiness the Buddha walked straight into, deliberately, compassionately, fearlessly. Tonight, you're going to hear the Buddha's encounter with a prostitute. Not as a moral lecture, not as a sanitized children's parable, but as a raw exploration of the human heart. Unfiltered, unprotected, uncomfortable, and absolutely transformative. Because if you ever thought enlightenment meant being far away from the dirty parts of life, this story proves the opposite. The Buddha didn't avoid what society rejected. He sat with it. He listened to it. He understood it. And he transformed it from the inside out. And in the process, he transformed everyone who thought they understood right and wrong, purity and impurity, holy and unholy. Tonight, this story might transform you too. Chapter 1. The woman everyone feared to touch. Her name was Ambapālī, a courtesan, a prostitute, a woman men desired in secret and despised in public. The kind of woman who lived in the shadows of society's hypocrisy. She had wealth. She had beauty. She had power over those who whispered about her. But she had no peace. Because at the end of every night, when the last man left, and the perfume faded, and the laughter died, she was alone. Deeply alone. Not the kind of loneliness you feel when you need company, but the kind you feel when you've forgotten who you really are. And then came the day the Buddha walked into Vaishali, a city of lights, noise, temptation, and political games. A city where everyone argued over who belonged where, who deserved respect, who was untouchable, and who was holy. A city that thought it knew the answers. And somewhere inside it, Ambapālī wondered if anyone would ever look at her and see a human being instead of a body. Chapter 2. When purity meets the unwanted. When word spread that the Buddha had arrived, all the nobles, merchants, and monks rushed to meet him. Everyone except her. Because why would she approach a holy man? Every religious teacher she'd ever met had only two modes toward her: judgment or lust. There was no in-between. They preached purity, then stared at her body when they thought she wasn't looking. They proclaimed morality and whispered invitations behind closed doors. She had learned the deepest truth about society. People love the idea of purity, but pretend their desires don't exist. So she stayed away. But fate had other plans. Because the Buddha chose his path deliberately, walking through the poorest streets, the forgotten corners, the alleys where the unwanted lived. He wasn't looking for kings. He wasn't looking for politicians. He was looking for the human heart, in all its forms. And so, he walked right past her home. She stepped outside, not expecting anything. Not looking for conversion. Not looking for salvation. But something made her pause. He didn't avert his eyes. He didn't stare at her the way men usually do. He didn't look away the way holy men usually do. He simply met her gaze, fully, calmly, with the presence of someone who saw her entire being in one breath. In that moment, for the first time in years, Ambapālī felt seen. Not judged, not desired, not categorized. Seen. And she felt her throat tighten. This wasn't attraction. This wasn't romance. This wasn't flirtation. This was the most uncomfortable thing she'd felt in years. Respect. The one thing she thought she'd lost the right to receive. Chapter 3. The invitation no one expected. Without hesitation, she spoke. Venerable sir, will you honor my home and take your meal with me tomorrow? A prostitute inviting the Buddha? The entire street froze. Monks turned pale. Citizens gasped. Merchants whispered. This was the scandal of scandals. But without blinking, without hesitation, without shame or fear, the Buddha said only, Ambapālī, your generosity is accepted. Gasps. Shock. Judgment. Outrage. How could the Buddha, the man who renounced the world, who taught purity, who warned about desire, agree to dine at the home of a prostitute? Simple. Because the Buddha never rejected a human being. He only rejected delusion. And Ambapālī was not deluded. She was suffering. She was searching. She was human. And he saw her humanity before society's labels. Chapter 4. The jealous and the hypocrites. Word spread fast. And soon, the wealthiest nobles raced to buy the Buddha's presents, offering gold, land, feasts, anything to outbid her. A prostitute feeding the Buddha? Unthinkable. Humiliating. They tried bribing her, threatening her, mocking her. But Ambapālī held her ground. For the first time in her life, she wasn't fighting for attention. She was fighting for truth. And so she said, "I will not sell what the Buddha has accepted." Those words shook the city. Because purity, it turned out, has nothing to do with your profession and everything to do with your sincerity. Chapter 5. What the Buddha really saw. The next morning, Ambapālī prepared her home. Not like a courtesan preparing for a client, but like a woman preparing to meet her own soul. She cleaned every corner. She wore simple clothing. She removed all perfumes and adornments. Not out of shame, but out of clarity. When the Buddha entered her home, she felt something she'd forgotten. Dignity. And as he sat, she realized a truth that cut through her like lightning. Every man who touched her body in desire never touched her heart. But the Buddha, who didn't touch her at all, reached her heart instantly. Because he wasn't seeing the woman others used. He was seeing the consciousness struggling to awaken inside her. The Buddha didn't purify her. He reminded her she was never impure. Chapter 6. What he told her in private. No one knows exactly what words passed between them that morning. But the ancient texts give a clue. He spoke about the impermanence of beauty, the exhaustion of chasing validation, the loneliness of being desired but never loved, the suffering of being trapped in an identity society forces on you. And in return, Ambapālī offered the Buddha something precious. Her understanding of desire, her witness to human weakness, her insight into how people hide their pain behind pleasure. And the Buddha listened, because wisdom is not found only in monasteries, but in every corner of the human experience. Even, and especially, the corners society avoids. And then it happened. A moment no one expected. The kind of moment that rewrites a human being from the inside out. Ambapālī, seeing clearly for the first time in her life, said quietly, "Teach me how to be free." And the Buddha replied, "You are already walking the path the moment you see your chains." Chapter 7. The night after the meal. That night, after the Buddha left her home, Ambapālī didn't return to her usual life. She didn't paint her lips. She didn't greet the wealthy men who arrived at her door, knocking with the same hunger as always. She simply sat, quietly, unmoving, breathing in the silence the Buddha left behind, a silence more intimate than any touch she had ever felt. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She wasn't acting. She wasn't selling an illusion. She was simply herself, and the truth hit her like a wave. She wasn't living. She was being lived by others. Her identity wasn't chosen. It was assigned. And she had worn it so long she forgot she could take it off. This realization didn't feel peaceful at first. It felt terrifying. Because when you stop being who the world expects, you're forced to face who you really are. And that's the moment transformation begins. Chapter 8. The city's anger, the Buddha's calm. As dawn approached, the city of Vaishali erupted with outrage. How could the Buddha stay with her? She defiles everything she touches. He should have gone to noble homes. She must have seduced him. This is a disgrace. The nobles felt threatened. The priests felt insulted. The wealthy felt ignored. The moralists felt exposed. Their anger had nothing to do with purity and everything to do with ego. The Buddha did not argue with them. He did not defend himself. He simply continued his teaching tour through the city. But every time he passed someone whispering, someone judging, someone filled with righteous fury, he met their eyes with silence. A silence that said more than any lecture. Your anger reveals you, not her. Chapter 9. Ambapālī's decision. 2 days later, Ambapālī walked alone along the mango grove outside Vaishali. The famous grove she owned, the grove men fought over, the grove worth a small fortune. It was her pride, her sanctuary, her symbol of independence, or so she thought. But the Buddha's presence had rattled something inside her, the longing to be free from all roles, all expectations, all labels. Even the ones she thought empowered her. And so she walked to the Buddha as he sat teaching under the shade of a large sal tree. She bowed, not as a courtesan bowing to a wealthy patron, not as a performer bowing after an act. She bowed like a human bowing to her own awakening. Then she said the words that shocked the entire city. "Venerable sir, I wish to offer you my mango grove." The grove. worth more than her entire estate, the crown jewel of Vaishali. She offered it freely. To the Buddha, to the Sangha, to the teaching that had pierced her heart. The monks stared in disbelief. The nobles nearly fainted. This was a disaster for their pride, a humiliation for their arrogance, a direct contradiction of everything they believed. But the Buddha accepted the gift with the same calm he accepted her invitation. May the merit of your generosity lead you to freedom from suffering. In that moment, Ambapālī stepped out of the identity the world gave her and into the life she chose. Chapter 10. What really makes a person pure? Once the grove was donated, the city expected the Buddha to give a fiery sermon about purity, warning about the dangers of women like her. But the Buddha did the opposite. He gathered everyone, monks, nobles, merchants, beggars, priests, and gave a single teaching that cut through the heart of hypocrisy. A person is not pure because of their birth, nor because of their wealth, nor because of their profession, nor because of their appearance, nor because of their past. A person becomes pure by changing the direction of their mind. The crowd froze, because for the first time, their social hierarchy collapsed. Purity was not owned by the wealthy. It was not inherited by the highborn. It was not destroyed by the lowborn. It was not erased by one's mistakes. Purity was a choice. Purity was an inner movement. Purity was an awakening. The Buddha had taken the most impure woman in Vaishali and revealed she had the clearest heart of anyone there. This was a revolution more dangerous to society than any political uprising. Chapter 11. Ambapālī's awakening begins. After giving away her grove, Ambapālī did something even more radical. She renounced her former life. She let go of her jewels. She released her servants. She dismissed her wealthy clients. She abandoned the mansion built from men's desire. And she walked, barefoot, to the Buddha's nuns community. She didn't ask to be purified. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She simply said, "Teach me how to be free from myself." The nuns received her not as a sinner, but as a sister. Her training began. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dramatic. There were no visions, no miracles, no heavenly signs. Just daily discipline, daily meditation, daily self-confrontation. What she discovered was something society never teaches. The hardest addiction to break is the addiction to being who you think you are. She had been addicted to her persona, to being admired, to being feared, to being desired. Now she had to face the silent space inside herself where none of those masks existed. And that silence changed her more deeply than anything she had ever known. Chapter 12. The beauty she never saw before. Before, Ambapālī's beauty was her curse. Men desired it. Women envied it. Society defined her by it. But in the monastery, her beauty meant nothing. No one praised it. No one judged it. No one wanted it. For the first time in her life, she saw her own reflection without the world's noise. Her face was simply a face. Her body was simply a body. Her past was simply a past. She discovered a truth the Buddha hinted at the day he ate in her home. Beauty that depends on praise is suffering. Beauty that depends on the body is temporary. But the beauty of clarity, that cannot fade. And so, as weeks became months, something extraordinary happened. Her old identity melted. Her mind sharpened. Her heart softened. Her awareness deepened. And the woman who once sold illusions began living in truth. Real truth. Silent truth. Unfiltered truth. Chapter 13. The return of the men who once desired her. Months later, word spread across Vaishali. The famous courtesan has become a nun. At first the men laughed. She'll be back. She needs the money. She's addicted to luxury. She won't last. Then curiosity grew. And eventually, men who once begged for her attention came to the monastery, hoping to see her again. But when they saw her, their breath caught. Not because she was seductive, not because she was glamorous, but because she was unrecognizable. A calm radiance surrounded her. Her eyes, once sparkling with seduction, now shone with piercing clarity, the kind of clarity that sees straight through a person's excuses. One man whispered, "She's more beautiful now than ever, and it has nothing to do with her face." Another said, "She doesn't even look at me the same way. I feel exposed." Ambapālī heard their comments, but they no longer had power over her. Desire no longer chained her. Shame no longer suffocated her. Identity no longer captured her. She was free, and freedom is the rarest beauty in the world. Chapter 14. The final step, facing the self. As Ambapālī settled into her new life, her meditation deepened in a way no one expected, not even the senior nuns. Because most people enter the spiritual path trying to escape desire. But Ambapālī understood desire from the inside, from the marrow, from the hidden corners of the human mind that few dare to look at. She didn't run from desire. She studied it. She traced its movements. She caught its whispers. She felt its pull. And for the first time, instead of letting desire use her, she watched it clearly. This was her advantage. Her past became her teacher. Her suffering became her fuel. Her clarity became her weapon. And slowly, she saw what the Buddha had seen in her from the beginning. She was built for awakening, not despite her past, but because of it. Chapter 15. The moment the illusions broke. One night, deep in meditation, Ambapālī confronted the very thing she had spent her entire life running from. The story of who she was. The child sold young. The girl groomed by society's hunger. The woman made into an object. The courtesan shaped by desire. The body used, praised, judged, bought, and discarded. She saw all the moments that carved lines into her mind. And then, the story cracked. Something inside her whispered, "This was never you. It was just the role you played." She watched it like a dream collapsing. The identities, the wounds, the shame, the pride, the beauty, the attention, the loneliness, the power, the fear. All of it dissolved in the quiet fire of her insight. And then it happened. The shift, the opening, the moment spiritual traditions spend centuries trying to describe. She saw impermanence, not as a philosophy, but as the pulse beneath all existence. She saw suffering, not as punishment, but as the misunderstanding of reality. She saw non-self, not as an idea, but as liberation from every identity that had ever burdened her. And in a breath, she crossed the threshold. Ambapālī awakened. Chapter 16. The Buddha's final teaching to her. At dawn, Ambapālī approached the Buddha one last time. He looked at her, not as a teacher looks at a student, but as a witness looks at a mountain fully formed. Her presence was different. Her aura was unshakable. Her eyes were clear in the way only those who have broken every chain can be clear. She bowed, not out of submission, but out of deep recognition. And the Buddha said, "Ambapālī, you have walked through fire and found the water within yourself." She said, "Master, I have seen that the body I once worshipped was only a shell, and the self I once protected was only an illusion." The Buddha replied, "Then you understand the path. Not the path of escape, but the path of truth. The world called you impure. You believed them, but impurity was never your nature. Delusion was, and you have cut through it. Completely." Ambapālī's lips trembled, not with sadness, not with joy, but with the kind of peace that fills a person who has nothing left to fear. Chapter 17. The poem she left behind. After her awakening, Ambapālī composed a poem that still survives today in the ancient Buddhist texts. A poem raw, real, and dramatically different from the refined verses of monks. A poem only someone who lived through desire, loneliness, beauty, and illusion could write. She wrote, "My youth flew by like a storm. My beauty faded like a flower. The men who praised me are bent now with age. And this body, once my pride, is nothing but bones wrapped in skin. But the mind I have trained shines brighter than gold. And the peace I have found no pleasure can equal. Desire used my body. Wisdom freed my heart." Her words became one of the most powerful pieces of awakening literature in Buddhism, because they weren't written by a monk shielded from the world, but by a woman who had tasted the world fully and still found something deeper. Chapter 18. The death she did not fear. Years later, Ambapālī fell ill. The same nobles who once mocked her now came to her hut seeking blessings, seeking teachings, seeking comfort from the woman they once bought for pleasure. She gave them none of that. She gave them truth. She told them, "Everything you cling to will leave you. The body, the wealth, the praise, the reputation, the pleasure, the roles. None of it will survive. So find what does not depend on anything the world can give." And when death finally approached, she met it with steady eyes and a quiet smile. No fear, no regret, no grasping, just awareness, a clean mind, a free heart, a soft breath, She died as the Buddha taught. Fully awake. Chapter 19. The lesson the Buddha wanted the world to learn. After her passing, when the Sangha gathered, the Buddha gave one of his most powerful statements, a final message born from her story. Do not judge a person by the stories the world tells about them. Judge only by their understanding. A courtesan may awaken. A king may remain blind. Freedom does not ask who you were. Freedom asks only if you are willing to see clearly. And the monks understood. The nuns understood. Even the nobles understood. Society creates labels. The mind creates identities. But wisdom cuts through them like lightning. Ambapālī's life wasn't a shameful footnote in Buddhist history. It was a demonstration that enlightenment is not for the pure. It is for the human. Not for the perfect, but for the honest. Not for the untouched, but for those who dare to look directly at their suffering and walk through it. White Medium Star Final Chapter. The unfiltered truth you're meant to walk away with. This is not just the story of Ambapālī. This is the story of every human being who has ever been judged, misunderstood, objectified, discarded, or told they were impure. This is the story of anyone who has lived with regret, with shame, with longing, with identity they didn't choose. This is the story of how a single moment of clarity can undo a lifetime of conditioning. And the Buddha's message, unfiltered and direct, is this. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. You are not the image others project onto you. You are not your past. You are not your reputation. You are not your mistakes. You are not your desires. You are the awareness that sees all of it. And once you see clearly, your entire life, your entire identity, can change, just like hers did. White Medium Star Conclusion, the path forward. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Just as Ambapālī dropped her roles, you can drop yours. Just as she saw through her illusions, you can see through yours. Just as she walked the path with courage, you can walk it too. The Buddha didn't go to her house because she was lost. He went because she was ready. And maybe, if you're listening to this right now, you are too.